Hey guys, welcome to 6 Minutes for Monday, December 19th. I'm Jason Fulmore, SC Wrestle, and today we are talking the Knockout. And before I get to the Knockout, big shout out to my friends Drew and Aaron who composed the new music for 6 Minutes. Can't express how much I appreciate their help in putting something together, and I hope each of you enjoy it. So today we're talking the Knockout with Lucas DeSilva, Fat and Scrappy's Lucas DeSilva, and I, as we break down the favorites, the contenders, the bracketbusters, and everything. It's going to be a fantastic tournament. I don't want to take too long because this is a long video. And I hope you guys tune in and enjoy our kind of take on what we expect to be a fantastic tournament. See ya. Bye. All right. Lucas DeSilva, Fat and Scrappy's Lucas DeSilva, man. How are things going?
Awesome, man. Doing some really cool stuff. Shout out Leeway Hitchcock in Florida. Shout out Waukema, South Carolina. Some other schools I'm working with doing some gear, of course. Fat and Scrappy, we got our own plans coming out, getting ready to start gearing up and get things in motion for the DeSilva Memorial Duels this summer. It's a lot of great stuff going on. It's a great time to be a part of Fat and Scrappy. I'm excited.
Awesome. And we are talking the Knockout, and you have some experience with the Knockout.
Yes, I do. Wrestled there for 3 years of my career, finished third, second. Thank you, Maddie Singleton, best friend. Tilted me up in the finals a couple of times. That was fun. No, it wasn't. But no, in grand scheme of things, in my opinion, pound for pound, unanimously the toughest tournament in the Southeast every season. I would make a claim it's got a top 5 spot around the country as a regular season event. Ran by one of the best programs in the Southeast when it comes to year over year putting out talent and doing things the right way. And in my opinion, humbly, one of the best schools at running events. Every event they run goes really well at Osceola. I've never had a problem at their events. So it's a great tournament all around.
Yeah, and you not only have wrestled at the events, you've actually had your Fat and Scrappy crew down to compete at the events, and you coached them. So yeah, and you know the Knockout is fun. You actually never got to compete in the Silver Spurs Arena when the Knockout was around. It was in the gymnasium, but
yeah, it was in the high school.
Yeah, but this year, like we have been for several years, we're at Silver Spurs, and I think we've got 64 teams. Mostly the Southeast, but we've got an Ohio school in there. We've got Point Pleasant out of West Virginia. We've got a New Jersey school and several others. So what do you say you and I jump in and we will break down we don't know the brackets, right? They haven't weighed in yet. So we don't know what this looks like. And we're totally going off of what was kind of provided and what we think where people are going to be. So yeah. If we pick out a favorite or, a couple of contenders or whatever, and somebody's not at that weight, it is what it is. It's just the way it has to play out.
In the grand scheme of things, with the way things are sitting right now, this has a little bit of guesswork to it.
Yeah, no doubt. So we'll do a favorite. We'll do a couple of contenders. We'll do maybe a dark horse or a bracket buster and talk a little bit about, each of the weights just in general. Does that work for you?
It sounds good.
All right, man. So let's start with the little guys, 106 pounds. Obviously, because we are down there, we have fewer nationally ranked or well-known or returning state placers or returning state champions or anything like that, because there's a lot of freshmen in the mix down at 106 pounds.
Freshmen, and I just noticed something.
Yeah.
A gentleman by the name of Carlos Sainz, sixth grader?
Sixth grader.
God, Florida, the Wild West. All right, I forgot that's a thing. All right, never mind. Cool. Moving on. I completely forgot that's a thing. I completely forgot. All right, cool.
Yeah, so we do have some 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in the mix because unlike
that's nutty.
What Luke is referring to is, in the state of Georgia, no matter whether you're a private school or not, you compete 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, and you don't get to compete as an 8th grader or as a 7th grader or whatever.
In most places around the state, they can't even wrestle JV. I know there's spots around the state where they're allowed to wrestle JV competitions, like Gwinnett County. We got fined one year because as an 8th grader, I wrestled at a JV scramble. Thank you, Mountain View.
All
They
right.
were the ones that called. We know they were the ones that called. We know. We got told. So thank you.
All right. So at 106, so I'm going to release a fans guide that will have a lot of this information. We're not going to go through a list of every single
Yeah, no.
name of. I mean, it'll just take us too long to do so. So there are a couple names at 106. Why don't you throw out who you think is the favorite, and maybe a couple of contenders that you think we should look for?
Obviously, you got guys like Doherty out of Mount Pisgah, who's been on a tear this season, wrestled really well. DJ Clark in his freshman season came off to a really good start and is still on a great season. Took a loss at Southern Slam to Lee Camp out of Cass, the junior, who will be back. Andrew Pulzalin, I can't say the last name for the life of me. Excuse me.
Punsalon, I think.
Out of Cypress Bay, Florida. I'm not as familiar with his work, but obviously I know him. Clark Box out of Hewitt, Trussellville, obviously a killer in his own right. Got some other guys down the list. I think Doherty at camp probably comes in as the favorite. Flip your coin on that one, both them. Clark probably close by that 3-4 spot to the 5 I just named.
All right. So I agree with you. We haven't seen Doherty at 6 this year. So assuming he is down at 6, he's been wrestling 113. He's been very competitive at 113. At the Southern Slam this past weekend, he wrestled, I think, at 113 at Jefferson.
Yeah.
And so if he's at 6, I think that he and Camp are certainly right there neck and neck. I agree with you with DJ Clark. I will say the Puntalon from Cypress Bay went to the Grappler Fall Classic, wrestled exceptionally well up there. He's also been at 13 for most of the year. If he makes it down to 6th, and then you throw a Clark Box at Hewitt Trussville. So I think you and I are pretty much on the same page. So give me a name of a dark horse, or maybe one or two, a bracket buster that we don't know anything about that you think might show out.
So obviously you got a guy like Quay Mills out of Mill Creek, one of the many Mills clan. Shout out to the Mills brothers and DJ McNeil, teammate of mine, Brute Parker. But the guy who I'm going to hone in on is my dark horse. I'm really high on this guy, Patrick Smith out of Lovett School. He's come into his freshman campaign, wrestled exceptionally well, even in a couple of his losses, looking really good. You might be a little more familiar with some of the Florida guys who may be on the come up, but for me, I like Patrick Smith a lot. I like the way he wrestles. He might just get himself a fat and scrappy call up this summer. I like the way he wrestles, that kid.
So I think to cue everybody, Lucas knows Georgia much better than he knows the other states around the Southeast. So I think that you probably will lean a little bit more towards, if you're picking somebody, you'll probably lean that way.
Say it. I know some of the Florida guys, but once we start hitting like a guy, I'll look at him here. Timothy McLean at Matanzas. I know the name. I've just never put eyes on him.
So that is actually my dark horse or my bracket buster. Yeah.
I promise you we didn't plan that ahead of time, ladies and gentlemen. I promise. I promise I was not planned.
Yeah. So he's definitely one to watch. Ben Norris out of Jensen Beach is another one to watch. David Darmus out of Doral Academy. There's a lot of them. And what's really interesting about 6 is that it's kind of open. I mean, certainly you've got Camp and you've got Doherty and you've got them, and they should be up there and should be kind of the ones that we're looking to knock off. But 6, in terms of all the rest of the weight classes, is the most wide open. Would you agree with that?
I would agree as well. I think that's the bracket where we could see the most kind of mix up and the most of we don't really know where anybody's going to finishing out. But it should be a fun bracket to watch, especially with you got a lot of these younger guys who are hungry and on the come up and trying to make a name for themselves, especially with some of the guys in there who are older, maybe have a bit more of a spot secured. It's very interesting. It's an interesting spot to be at 106 pounds for sure.
All right, so let's jump to 113, and I'm just going to give a couple of overviews, and then we'll jump into it. There are 50 in the field, right? We have, 3, 6, 9, 11. I think 11 that are returning state champions or returning state placers.
Crazy.
Yeah, and not even a part of that group is a freshman from Mill Creek in Antonio Mills, who is a Super 32 placer and he hasn't even had a shot to get on the podium
Yeah.
in the state of Georgia yet. Um, so who is your favorite, and give me a couple of those contenders.
I think coming in, I don't necessarily want to say a clear favorite, but I think the favorite to me is Antonio Mills. He's come out and been on fire as he started his high school campaign, taking an 8th place finish at Super 32, being dominant the entire season in Georgia. This will be a really good opportunity to see him against guys like a Gabriel Tellez, who I'm high on, Tyler Washburn, who I'm high on. We've seen him against Ebold and guys like of that nature, and Bellardo. Bellardo and
Another
Ebold
freshman, right?
Bellardo and Ebold to him again on a nice little rivalry in the state of Georgia. So I'm kind of interested to see if maybe we could get them to match up again this weekend. It's a very interesting bracket, but I think going in, if I have to pick a favorite, I think it would be Antonio Mills.
So I'm going to disagree with Lucas here, and I'm going to go with Tyler Washburn. And the reason I'm going to go with Washburn is that a couple of things. Number one, and I think you could pick Gabriel Tellez as well. Certainly, they're all in the mix. Antonio Mills, his Super 32 place was at 6, was not at 13. Washburn and Tellez, I think, both wrestled at Super 32 up at 13. So they're used to that weight. I will say Mills does look like a big 13 pounder. So I don't think he's going to struggle as far as giving up weight or anything like that. And a name
I can put you on good word. He's not going to struggle with that. That I can promise you. That won't be the struggle.
I will guarantee you that the name Roman, whether it's Roman Lermer, who is a returning state champion for Jesuit, or Roman Bellardo from Jefferson, one of the two of them, I think, will be on the knockout podium somewhere from 1 to 6 at 113.
I would nearly be willing to argue both will be there. I'd almost be willing to argue that because both of them are killers.
Yeah, I agree. But the weight is deep. So let's talk a little bit about a bracket buster, a dark horse, somebody off the radar that you might want to pay attention to that you might not know anything about.
Obviously, if I want to go Georgia heavy, funnily enough, it would be another Lovett athlete in Alex Hyman. But there is this is some of my little bit of Florida knowledge coming in handy, a little bit. OB Encarnacion at a South Dade junior season, super, super tough. Dade always they bring 14 ready to bang. So both of them, if you're asking me for one, it'd be either Hyman or Encarnacion for sure.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and go a little bit different direction. And there is a state runner-up from Louisiana and Caden Trish from Rummel. And then way off the radar, I think, is an Ohio State qualifier from St. Vincent St. Mary and Christian Osborne. I don't know. I haven't seen them wrestle in person, but I have watched a little bit of tape of both of them. And I think that they might be somebody that you might want to watch. Now, again, we have 50 wrestlers at 13 pounds. So being a bracket buster might simply mean you win 3 matches or 4 matches. And, I mean, because it's so deep, but I'm with you. All right. So that'll be a fun weight. We're a little bit different on that. I wonder if we're different at 120. So at 120,
120 might be the deepest bracket in this whole tournament.
It might be, although. So are you going to go out? Are you going to say 120 is the top?
I'm saying it might be. It's for sure one of them. It's top 5, top 4 for sure. When you look at some of these names, I mean, good God, this bracket.
Yeah, this bracket's fun. So 49 wrestlers at 120 pounds. We've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 wrestlers who have either won a state title or placed at their state tournament. And I was looking at the list of individuals who haven't placed, and they're tough. So this, like you said, is a pretty tough bracket. But for me, I think that it has a clear favorite, and I think
it does as well.
Sebastian De Janeiro from Jensen Beach. Do you agree?
Oh my! You want to talk about a kid? I remember going into Elite 8, seeing the name Sebastian De Janeiro, seeing Jensen Beach. I knew who he was. I had heard the name before. But you want to talk about a kid who jumped out on the map at Elite 8. He wrestled his tail off. Then he goes to Super 32 and beats
Cooper Hilton.
Thank you. I was like, why am I losing my mind? Because I commentated that match. And he has just put himself on the map in a huge way. And not to knock anyone else in the bracket, but I would say, outside looking in, he's walking into Osceola Kissimmee as the favorite.
I would agree with that. I mean, he had a great run at Ironman. He's nationally ranked by Matt Scouts by Willie Saylor in the top 10. I mean,
I think he's like number 6, number 7, somewhere in that range.
Super tough, super tough. So if you were to say, give me a couple of contenders that you think might be able to push him a little bit, who are a few names that somebody who is sitting in the stands next to Lucas DeSilva, who doesn't know the field, who should they be watching?
For sure, a guy like a Christian Fretwell at a Lake Gibson state champion last season, 5th at the Ironman. Sorry, thank you. Sorry.
It's all good. Yeah, because he was out of state last year.
10-4. Third out, Fargo sophomore. He's obviously one to watch. Chas McDonald out of Jefferson in his senior campaign. Super tough state champion last season, runner-up 2 times before that. You also got a guy like a Tyler Wynn out of Columbus, who I don't know if a lot of people will know about because he doesn't necessarily wrestle a lot of the bigger events, but Tyler Wynn, I think, is a guy to watch. I don't know if I'd necessarily call him a bracket buster because I'd say he'd probably be in the top 6 seeds, but like that'd be my main, 5 to 6 I would talk about.
Very cool. So I agree with you. McDonald, Fretwell. I don't know if I heard Nathan Wood, a West Virginia state champ out of Point Pleasant, is definitely a name.
I will say that's West Virginia. I will look, like I said, I'll completely admit I'm not as familiar with the West Virginian boys. I know that they're tough. I've had my battles with a guy like a John Martin Best on a handful of occasions from West Virginia. Right. So I'm just not as familiar with them.
So I only know Point Pleasant in the most recent crew because last year I was at the Lake Norman duels where Point Pleasant came down and dueled with, West Forsyth in Georgia and Lake Norman, North Carolina.
Gotcha, okay.
As well as Ford in North Carolina, a bunch of other teams.
So this seems like you got a little bit of insider trading.
Well, I got to watch them compete. So I know them a little bit better than I might know otherwise. Yeah. Otherwise, I wouldn't really know a West Virginia team very well. Gotcha. A name that I think that I still think will be seated in the top 8, but is a name to watch is Blaine Toronto from Venice. Super tough. Yep. He should be a pretty big 20-pounder, I would think. And I think he's definitely somebody to watch.
Agreed.
All right, so let's go off the radar. Who is somebody that? I mean, I know you said Tyler Nguyen, but he's not off the radar. I mean, he was a state champ in Georgia. So give me somebody else that's off the radar that that we should watch.
I got 2, actually. You got a guy like a Ty Gentry out of Buford, obviously, in that Buford crew, and he's done a really good job as of late, obviously working with some of those guys. But at Southwest Miami, in his senior season, Ryan Kaminsky has always been a guy that, like, in certain situations, has been viewed as the gatekeeper to that next level because when guys wrestle him, the kind of Ryan Kaminsky you're getting. He's a killer. I remember him knock out a couple seasons ago against my team and having to really game plan against him. If I remember correctly, he wrestled Josh Noble, and Noble beat him close, but it was a dogfight the whole way through. So Kaminsky or Gentry to me would be my dark horses.
All right, so I'm going to go with Southwest's rival in South Dade and Luis Acevedo, who I think South Dade is going to be. We're going to talk about the team race here at the end of this, and I think South Dade will be in the hunt and. Acevedo is going to be really important whether they kind of push through or they don't push through. So I think Acevedo is somebody to watch. I also think you should definitely watch a Xavier Albo from Tampa Jesuit. He's only a sophomore, but definitely one that could, it's so hard to pick a bracket buster because it's so deep and none of those people are going to, are probably going to be seated in the top 8. Maybe not even in the top 16, and you could pull a Sebastian De Janeiro first, and that would be tough. If you're just drawing in, that's gonna be a tough draw.
If you pull De Janeiro off the scale, ooh.
All right, so let's jump to 126. There are 50 in the field. I didn't count these up, but it looks like there is 5, 10, 15, 20, 22 maybe Super 30 or not 22
Come on.
state placers, state champions.
This
It,
bracket, we got 2 Super 32 placers. Good luck.
yeah, this is a fun one. So you've got probably my favorite. I mean, last year knockout champion. Certainly, I mean, ranked in the top, I think 5 by Willie Saylor. Jake Craps out of Cass. He is a NHSCA champion, a Super 32 runner up. I mean,
Fall Classic champ.
yeah, I mean, we're talking just he's at that level. So would you agree that he's the favorite? And if you would, who is a part of the pack that's chasing him?
I think obviously a Jarvis Little at a Summit state champion, grabbed the Fall Classic All-American, AHSCA All-American. I think another guy, Maximus Brady, who I've watched him wrestle once or twice. I'm not as familiar with him. I'll admit that. You got a Kale Kusky out of Lubbock, but a guy I want people to watch out for, the St. Vincent St. Mary's, Bryce Skinner, Ohio State champion. He's gonna be one to watch. He's tough. I can tell you that, because after I saw when you gave me your little cheat sheet, I saw state champion. I went and watched some tape, and the kid's good. He's gonna be one to watch.
I agree with you. And to go ahead and tip the cap to Jarvis Little a little bit, he also just, I think, placed at Beast of the East just this past weekend. So I mean, he's coming in hot, and definitely I agree with you. So Skinner, Brady, Kusky, Spencer Reap from Lakeway Christian is another one I think to keep an eye on. Maximus Brady. So I think everybody we just mentioned were state champions last year. So
yeah.
So
yeah.
So if you were to pick a non-state champion to kind of push the field here at 126, who would be a non-state champ that you think could have an impact?
I would say, being your Georgia representative, I would be remiss without mentioning Kieran McCormick, who freshman last season at Buford, didn't really make too much noise. Ended up finishing 3rd in the bracket in 6A. But he had one hell of a summer, going to Elite 8 and banging with I believe he was on Black Mambas. I believe he was on. He wasn't on Minions. I know that. It might have been Mamba. I forget what team he was on specifically. But went out, wrestled his tail off, wrestled in the preseason, and has come on this season, has been on fire. Had a good showing. I think went out in the blood rounds at KC Stampede, if I'm not mistaken, or he might have made the podium.
I don't remember. I looked through it just, I don't know, hours ago, but
yeah, I
so
saw
many
the
names.
tweet. I saw the tweet from Buford, and I think I reposted it, but I can't remember specifically whether he got in or not. Point being, if I had to pick one, it would be Kieran McCormick.
All right, and I'm going to go with 2. Man, it's so hard to pick. Certainly Ryan Mooney, who out of Jensen Beach trains with Sebastian De Janeiro there, 3rd place last year. Placed at the knockout. And I think that plays a huge role. He's already been on the podium at this tournament. He's not going to
went out in the bloods. I just looked at the Twitter.
Mooney is not going to be surprised by the scale of the tournament. So I think that plays a huge role. And to go back to Georgia a little bit, Jonathan McDaniel out of Columbus has been wrestling really pretty good. Yes, I think his loss was only to Ethan Urachuk up at McCallie. Other than that, he's really been right there. Definitely another person to watch at 126 pounds, which should be super deep. And I don't know how in the world at the end of this we're going to pick which is the toughest weight class. But anyway, we've got a couple that are in the running right now.
Oh, well, for sure. Yeah, there's a couple.
All right, so let's jump to 132. I think this is either the largest or one of the largest brackets. It has 55 entries in the field. So we're going to start with a pretty full 64-man bracket going. And again, a lot of names in this field to keep an eye on. I want to go ahead and note that there are a couple missing that we didn't see on the registration. Charlie Armstrong and Jose Gutierrez, who's an NHSA All-American. Blue Stifler, who I think is a little banged up at the moment, trying to get healthy.
That's everything I've heard, is that he's just a little banged up. So
yeah, he could go if he needed to go, but why go
exactly
in this situation? And
I
Cameron
think that
Helton.
that's the scenario, is that he's just going to miss the trip due to just, and it's nothing major, it's just a slight knock that they don't want to exaggerate
Right. So
from what I've heard.
at what, again, right. At 132 pounds, who's your favorite?
Throw a dart. I mean, I'd be willing to say that there's a three. I think that there's a three that most people will probably pick between you: Gutter Andrick, Amante Mills, and Maddox MacArthur. No diss to Gavin Nolan, but I think he might be more outside looking in. But I think those, and again, I'm not as familiar. Again, I throw my hands up, not as familiar, but I think that he'd be closer to 4 than 3 or 2. I honestly don't know. If you're asking me, I'm gonna go. Mills and MacArthur haven't wrestled yet this year, right?
I don't think
No.
so. I don't think so.
I might go Andrick, but boy, Maddox MacArthur's screaming at me, and so is Amante Mills. I don't know. Like, that's one where I'm spinning a wheel and I'm throwing a dart. I really don't know. Like, that's a dart.
Darts and popcorn, right?
Yes, that's legitimately what this whole weight class is: darts and popcorn. Because it's an interestingly deep bracket.
So I will say that that when I watched Point Pleasant wrestle a year ago at Lake Norman, obviously the person to watch was Derek Reiki, I think it was his name.
Yeah.
52-pounder, unbelievably tough and everything else. But there was a freshman that I walked away from like watching that I was unbelievably impressed with, and that is Gunnar Andrick. He is ranked in the top 100 on the big board by Mat Scouts and that sort of thing. I'm really interested to see Monty down at 32.
Me too.
And see how he competes there at 132 pounds. I think Monty could beat anybody around. So I wouldn't go against it, but I think Andrick might be your favorite. It'll be interesting to see how it all kind of plays out. All right. So if you gave me the three, and then you talked about Gavin Nolan, maybe give me one or two other contenders you think will be right there.
I think a guy that'll be right there, Ryan Phillips at a Winter Springs. I've seen him a couple of times. He's a killer in his own right. We've seen Caden Brown at North Paulding. He's been on a tear this season. Of course, you got a guy like a Kiowa Vines.
Kiowa Vines?
Kiowa. Okay. Again, I'm going to be on a microphone in theory at the knockout. And if I'm saying a name wrong in this video, please walk up on me and please tell me I'm saying it wrong, because I don't want to be the guy to announce a name wrong while I'm commentating, because I'm going to feel like a putz. So if I'm saying it wrong and you hear it, please tell me. That's
Absolutely.
all I ask.
Know what? That's fair. That's fair.
Now,
because
that makes me mad when people wait till after the turn and say, hey, by the way. I'm like, bro, I think I was on a microphone all weekend.
The only name I would add to what you just said is Ethan Bugman of Bartram Trail, who seems to, I mean, I've watched him so many times. He's placed at the knockout twice. He is a state runner-up. He's a state placer. He's always been right there on the cusp, and he hasn't necessarily kind of broken through and taken that top spot. But I think that he's definitely somebody who you should keep an eye on. All right, so way off the radar, like who is one other individual that people may not know who they should?
Well, I must tip my cap to one of my favorite names in all of Georgia wrestling, and Rowdy Duck. Boy, that is a name. But I got to be a bit of a homer on this one. I got to do it. I've known the Russell family my whole life down here in Georgia. Dallas Russell, the youngest of the group. Honey Badger, we used to call him. Seeing him in high school now, he's come off to a great start to his high school career. I'm excited to see him at this weekend. I'm being a homer. I'll be honest. I'm being a homer. That's my guy.
You're not being a homer. I mean, look, the only reason he wouldn't be necessarily
I'm
seated.
gonna get called a homer. I'm gonna get called a homer. That's what's gonna happen. I know what's gonna happen. See, I know your viewers and I know my viewers. I'm gonna get called a homer for that. And guess what? I don't care.
So I don't. I mean, so I would say this. I think pretty much everybody knows who Dallas Russell is. He probably won't be seated necessarily in the top 8 based upon how the depth of the weight and what will be used as the criteria. But I'll tell you right now that he may not come in as one of the top 8 seeds, but he could beat anybody in those top 8 seeds. I mean, any single one of them. So
I agree.
He is
No, I agree,
definitely
1000%.
somebody. He will be a bad draw. He's taken Gorman and wrestled him tough. I saw him wrestle Stifler. He is right there, and he is definitely one that if you're from Florida or Alabama or South Carolina or coming down
Where
from West Virginia, look for that name because that will be a name that you're gonna go, "Ooh, that kid's gonna like."
yeah,
Where did he come from?
you're gonna want to know if you're catching him early. You're gonna want to know.
Yes, 100%. All right, so let's jump to 138, and in my opinion, one of the top 3 weights in the entire knockout.
Agreed.
55 wrestlers, and 20 something state champions and state placers. And for me, it's headlined by Drew Gorman of Buford, state champ, Fargo All-American, ranked by Willie Saylor. But I don't think that because of the depth at 138 pounds, and I think Gorman is certainly the favorite, but I think that this weight is super good.
This
And
weight is nuts.
and
When you really get into the trenches, it's nuts.
and just because you have somebody that's nationally ranked, don't be just handing things out saying that person's going to win the knockout, because I will tell you this is a weight that is super deep. So if you agree with me as Gorman being the favorite,
I agree. Yep.
who are the handful of people that are going to challenge him?
I mean, so obviously you got an EJ Solis of South Dade. Dude is a hammer.
He
He'll
is.
obviously contend. You got a Landon DeSell out of Summit, who I'm not as familiar with. Again, I'd raise my flag. I'm just not. You got a Danny Martinez, Connor Blessing, state champ out of West Virginia. And then you hit this. There's a wealth of depth in this bracket that is nuts. Where
Right.
Like for my Georgia people, you got Marley Washington, Colin Mullins, Hayden Santora, Jake Kennedy, Davis Dollar's in the mix, Brady Nardella's in the you got so many guys in this bracket who, if they're in a Georgia bracket, they're a top 2 seed, top 3 seed without question. So seeing them in this kind of pack here, there's gonna be some very interesting draws in this bracket, and I'm edge of my seat waiting.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I watched Solis wrestle Martinez at the Grappler Fall Classic in a match I think that went to overtime with Solis.
Yep.
Oh no, Martinez ended up I think winning. Man, does Martinez win or does Solis win? No, Solis ended up winning. Solis ended up winning.
Solis.
Yeah.
Yeah, Solis got second, and this Martinez got 5th.
Yeah, no, and it was a great match. Definitely one that is there. Landon DeSell, again, just like Jarvis Little, his teammate, just placed at Beast of the East. So, definitely another one that will be right there in the hunt. And he, as we're naming off these names, he doesn't even have a state title, right? I mean, according to what I have, he has state third, state
third,
sixth,
That's
two-time NHSA All-American. So again, super talented, really great field. And you threw out some Georgia names. I'm gonna throw out a few Florida names just because, CJ Liddy from Buchholz, Braden McCall, Ronnie Thielacker. You got a Nick Dempsey up in Thompson from Alabama, who's a 2-time Alabama state runner-up. This is a super deep weight. All right, so we've already named a ton of names, but let's just throw that dart to somebody who's way off the radar that might have an impact on this field. But again, it's going to be hard.
Honestly, the farthest I could go with someone that I don't know if a lot of people will know. You have him as a state placer because he is, but I'm still going to throw him out there as I don't know how many people are really going to know about him unless they know. Hayden Santora out of Woodland, I'm super high on. I've been high on this kid since he was an 8th grader. Long story short, he was going to be on Team Fat and Scrappy a year ago. He would be my guy that I look at, but also, I'll give you a Justin Brady out of Lemon Bay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know him as well, but from everything I've seen in his results as he enters his senior campaign here at the Knockout, he could really go and make some noise. I just am not as familiar. I've put eyes on Santora 1,000 times. So that would be my guy.
All right. So I'm going to go way off the radar. And I don't think that I don't think that this person has a state placer or state placing or anything like that. And that is Jean Valoria out of Palmetto Ridge. Um, just somebody who I don't know how much of an impact you can have on a bracket that is this deep, but again, not somebody you want to overlook if you pull them early,
For sure.
and definitely somebody that's gonna, gonna push a little bit. All right.
Sure.
So would you agree that 138 to this point is the deepest, or were you gonna go back to the 120s?
I'll say it, but it's close. I feel like that 38 is weird because you have your headlining name, and after the first two or three, you get to just, hey, here's 1,000 state placers. They're all in this bracket. Like, it's a different kind of deep, I would say.
All right. So
So
let's
145, which
Yeah.
is also a different kind of deep.
It
Because
is.
can we agree that 145 is a bit of a wide open weight? Can we agree?
So I think it probably is, although I will say Anderson Heat from Osceola, who is a returning knockout champ, probably is in the lead. But again,
I would agree with that. I'd say
I look at Hayden Witten, who has wrestled super well. You got Jewel Williams, you got Tyler McKnight, who I think is fantastic from Cass,
and who is sun level hot right now. He's been on fire these past couple weeks. And I don't know who put this devil juice in his water, but don't stop. I like it. I don't know who did it, but I'm not mad at it.
So I think again, 45 is a weight that is deep. I think we mentioned the four names I think of right when I look at it.
Yeah, I do as well.
But I'm looking down the list, and you've got a Jace Parent, who was a state runner-up from St. Francis, a Gavin Pope from Buford, who was a state placer. But you look further down that list, you got Josh Denson at North Paulding, who has beaten Pope twice, who Pope just made the podium at KC Stampede.
Yep. Shout out to Gavin Pope.
And I'll tell you right now,
hey, just for Gavin real quick, YY Strong, still YY Strong.
There you go.
Shout out. But yeah, no, when it comes to Georgia people, just look at this. I'm going to list the Georgia names for a clarification. You got Tyler McKnight. You have Nicholas Moffitt, Jace Parent, Gavin Pope, Aiden Ingram, Banks Bitterman, Josh Denson.
Good.
A super, super deep Georgia bracket. And then you throw the Florida and Alabama guys you got in here. It's like, wow, okay.
I agree with you.
Darts.
I agree with you. I think Anderson Heap is probably your favorite, but I will say,
I would agree with that.
I will say it is going to be tough. Like it's not 100% sure. And I'm going to throw out a name in Gavin Young out of Tampa Jesuit, who's been wrestling exceptionally well. And I think he's a senior, and he's definitely one, again, to keep an eye on that is way off the radar. Do you have somebody off the radar that you want to say, or?
Funnily enough, this one's an Alabama pick for me. I really like Parker Edmondson out of Thompson Senior. I believe he's made the state bracket once or twice, not really put it all together yet, but from start of the season looked real tough. Saw him out at Super 32, wrestle tough. And I remember seeing him a couple years back at an event. I just remember hearing the name Parker Edmondson and watching him and liking what I've seen of him. So I'll throw him out there as hey, if you catch him off the scales, you better watch yourself. Like, he can bang.
All right. So let's jump to 152, 50 in the field, headlined by three-time Florida State champ, two-time
This is what I play.
Two-time knockout runner-up, also I think a three-time knockout placer in Cooper Haas, Matt Scout's number 6. But again, like we talked about at 38 and what we talked about at 26 and a couple of other weights above, this weight is super tough. And while Cooper is the favorite, and I think we both agree that he's a favorite, you've got Tyler Nelson, Brandon Cody, Gianni Maldonado, Devin Stone, Alex Soto. I mean, I could go down the list. And
Adrian Ochoa out of Southwest Miami, who's a killer.
yeah, although he might be up at 60. We'll have to see how that plays out.
Okay.
But yes, but again, we have this huge long list. Is there? Give me some Georgia kids that I haven't mentioned that you might they might
Obviously,
see.
and Elijah Doolittle, state runner up at a cast last season, and a guy I really like personally. I'm a fan of JT Bowers' wrestling at West Lawrence sophomore. He was a state third placer last season. I like what I see out of him. So if I was gonna pinpoint a guy for the Georgia fans who might be a little unknown outside of the Georgia crew, it'd be him.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and tip the cap to South Carolina State runner-up, and I'm going to slaughter the name of Hunter Jagodzinski of Hillcrest.
Yeah, you got it.
I think it's a tough weight to have an impact on, but he's definitely one to watch. And then there are two Florida kids, and that is Nathan Furman out of Palm Bay and Galvin Balmaceda, who are both sitting right there. This could be the party where like they pull off that upset and are standing at the top. So I think those are two wrestlers that you should keep an eye on.
And something that you talked about in your video of best guys to not win the knockout, this is Haas's last shot, 2-time finalist runner or third placer once as well. And in this kind of a bracket, it's the kind of bracket that has enough mind. It's a minefield. Like once we hit like the round of 16 and on, you're going to see some guys get knocked off. That
you better be on, because if you're not on, you're going to lose.
Yeah. And then you're going to get, and then you're going to knock me down to 5th in best guys to not win the knockout. Don't worry, I still remember that. Anyways.
All right. So I'm going to throw you one more name, and that is Jaheim Mills out of Mill Creek, who, it isn't on this list. And I think he's he and Kat Benson out of Jefferson are both real possible bracket busters. Again, though, I go back to saying, how can you bust a bracket that is this deep? And then the last name I would say, and I don't think this is a bracket buster at all, is Dimitri Zertopoulos.
You got that.
From Palmetto Ridge, who, again, Dimitri, I think I slaughtered it last year at the state tournament. Sorry about slaughtering it again, but definitely one to watch at 152. I agree with you, though, Lucas. Cooper Haas has got to be one of considered to be one of the top 5 if he doesn't win it this year. Do you think there's some pressure?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call it pressure, because you got to understand something. I didn't know much about Cooper Haas going into the knockout SummerSlam when I took Team Fat Scrap. Like, I've heard the name, knew he was tough, but I didn't know too much about him. And then I'm watching him go up against Josh Noble, beating him up, and while do it shooting jump shots. I don't think he feels pressure. I don't think it exists for him. I really don't. Like, and that's a testament to him, because I've seen him in the biggest stages when he's having a laugh. And I love that about him. Like, he has a way of himself where you could just see he's out there having fun. Well, and that's when you wrestle your best.
And he has a motor. I mean, like, you watched him against Gilcher in the semifinals at the freaking Super 32. And I'll tell you what, if there's any more time on the clock, Cooper wins that match.
I commentated that match, and I thought he was going to get him. Like, I genuinely thought he was going to get him. And not that I was surprised when he did it, but it was like, oh, okay. And I think I even said in the Gilcher escapes. Like, he gets out of that one pretty much by the hair on his chin, because Haas was coming.
He was coming.
Shout out to Cooper Haas. He's a killer. Like, that's all I got. That's all I got for you. That's all I got for you. Like, I don't know what else you want me to say about him.
All right, 160 pounds, 53 in the field, and I'm going to throw out some names, and then I want you to tell me who is the favorite. Dominic Bambinelli, Mill Creek, Super 32, yep. Super 32 All-American. Chris Minto, 2-time Florida State champ, NHSCA All-American. Gunnar Holland, 2-time Florida State champ, 2-time NHSCA All-American. Kendrick Hodge, who is a GFC champ, state champ, NHSC All-American. Chris Mance was an NHSC runner-up and state champ in Georgia. Max Norman, who you saw at Elite Eight, who wrestled freaking awesome at Elite Eight, state champ, NHSCA runner-up, or NHSCA All-American. So you have NHSCA All-Americans as the first 6 guys. I mean, it's kind of crazy. And then an NHSCA champ in Dominic Bambinelli. How do you pick a favorite?
You do it like this, Dominic Bambinelli.
All right. So
that.
All right, because Dominic Bambinelli has been. I mean, he was on the podium last year at Knockout.
It's not necessarily to say he's on a different level than some of these guys. I say that because as of now, with the criteria that will be used to pick a favorite and seed, Super 2 All-American, NHSCA champion, he's ranked number 10 by Matt Scouts. He's beaten some of these high-level names in the country that maybe a guy like a Minto Holland or Hodge, maybe they haven't beat him, or maybe they just haven't had the opportunity to wrestle them yet. I think a lot of what comes down to Bambinelli is his willingness to go and travel everywhere and wrestle everybody. So, like, right. That would be how, like, it's him.
Yeah, I agree. Although I will say, and I think that further down the list, and he probably won't be as seated as high, but I watched Max Norman beat Jeremiah Price, and I watched him beat some outstanding wrestlers at Elite Eight, and you better watch out for the kid from Dobbins Bennett.
I don't disagree at all.
Yeah. All right. So we got all them, and then guess what? We have state champs in Joey Bertrand, George Ferrer from Kentucky, Josh Woyan from Point Pleasant. We have state runners up in Adrian Ochoa, Harris Mitchell, Finley Jameson. I mean, 160 is super tough. So
it's ridiculous.
So who off the radar, and I don't think actually anybody off the radar is actually going to win 160, but who could upset a few people?
You want to have a guy that could upset a couple and maybe make some noise? You can look at Cat Benson out of Jefferson, who has come onto the scene these past couple of weeks, wrestled incredibly well, shown himself to be a legit contender in the state of Georgia. And if you catch him off the scale, or maybe early day one, you're still kind of getting your feet underneath you, you better watch out, because this kid is legit.
No, I agree with you. And
maybe some people say maybe he's a year away from contending for a knockout title, which I would agree with. But if we're talking about just someone that maybe can make a run, make some noise, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised by Cat Benson. Shout out, Cat.
So I'm just curious whether he'll be at 52 or 60, because I know Davis Dendy wrestled. I mean, and again, this goes back to what we talked about earlier with the Georgia weights being 50, 57, 65. And now we're now using Florida weights here. So it'll be interesting to kind of see where he falls. And then I want to go ahead and make note.
I haven't been able to talk about my endearing love for the GHSA in a couple of weeks yet. I might just do that.
There's several wrestlers who aren't registered, and Conlon Weaver and Camden County are not in the field any longer, which is a shame. We'd love to see them there. I don't see Cordell White listed for South Dade. Davis Dendy, I know he's been out from Jefferson. I saw him at Southern Slam, and he was out from there. And Seth Larson, I know, is still rehabilitating and getting better. Can you imagine this field if you had entered Weaver, White, Dendy, and Larson also?
It would be the pound for pound toughest bracket, and I don't think we would have I don't think there'd be a real discussion about it.
Yeah.
If all those guys were there, if all of them were there, I don't see how that wouldn't be number one. I just don't. I don't see a world where it wouldn't be.
All right, so let's jump to 170. Tyler Secoy beat Creed Thomas at the Jefferson 3-2. For me, the two of them, from what I'm seeing from the list of names, look like they are probably the favorite. Does Secoy now have the edge because he has that win?
I would say that.
Or do you think Creed, it was his first time back on the mat.
I don't think that necessarily matters. Head to
Okay.
head, I'd give the nod to Secoy just on the head to head. But I would say this isn't very much like you, Mr. Fulmore.
What?
Because there's a Floridian that didn't get a mention there.
Well,
I would.
I was only making mention that the two of them are probably the
I thought you were talking about
favorites.
favorites. I was like, hang on now.
Now,
There's one guy here that
now Roman Garcia from Palmetto Ridge, Camden Harrison, there's actually a number of Floridians in this group who could definitely contend.
Garcia is who I was like, yo, you want to talk about a guy that has a case to be the favorite?
Roman Garcia.
Third last year at the knockout, multiple time Fargo All-American, multiple time state place, hasn't been able to put together in the state finals, but kid's been on a tear this year. And with the fact that Secoy just knocked off Thomas, who going into the event, I think Thomas would have been the number one, if not for the loss to Secoy. Does that necessarily bump Secoy to number one, or does that open the door for a him or state champion at Thompson, Alabama, maybe a Carson Freeman? I think the seeding in 170 is going to be fascinating.
I agree.
The way they see.
Well, and Carson Freeman just placed at the KC Stampede. So that's another thing to keep in mind, because, that's a tough tournament, and making the top 6 in the KC Stampede is certainly, a feather in the cap, and something that should play into, like you said, that seeding. So let's throw out one other name that I think is as far as our group of contenders, and that is Zach McKnight. Zach's been wrestling exceptionally well as well. He won the Southern Slam. I watched him there. So, but I do think 170, it's going to be a fun bracket to kind of watch. And I think the seeding is going to be huge. Anybody off the radar that we should keep an eye on at 170?
I would say, if I'm going to go off the radar for the casual viewer, I'd say Josh Lang out of Mount Pisgah Jr. I don't know if a lot of people know about him outside of Georgia. I see he finished third and fifth in his last 2 seasons. Hasn't really had a good opportunity to get a lot of these guys, get a matchup against a lot of these guys. So I'm interested to see how he can do. I'm not saying necessarily he's going to end up on the podium or anything of that nature, but you want to talk about a guy that can win a couple, make some noise. Don't be surprised if you see Josh Lang and the Bloods wrestling a tough match and maybe getting onto that podium. Do not be surprised. The kid can
All right.
More fitness product.
I'm going to go with South Dade's Lawrence Rosario. I think, again,
good
just
pick.
like Luis Acevedo, South Dade is going to be in the hunt. You got EJ Solis and Sawyer Bartelt, who are going to certainly be in the hunt for a title. I don't think that Rosario necessarily is going to win the title at 170, although I think he's super talented. But he's going to be pushed because South Dade's going to be in the hunt.
And if South Dade's going to win a team title, they need him on the podium. When you start really counting placers and counting who might get a title where, they're going to need him on the podium. They're going to need that for it to go their way. And I'll throw another guy out there who I like, Elijah Penton out of Winter Springs. I saw him last season, and I like him. I think the kid is on the up and up junior campaign. Figured I'd throw him out there. Shout out to him.
I agree 100%. All right, so let's jump to 182. Not as deep of a bracket, in my opinion, as the rest of, or as much of the other, but I still think it's a great bracket. And it actually has a wrestler in the bracket as Tito Solorzano from Lake Gibson, who was the only wrestler to win the knockout last year, and he didn't end up winning a state title. So, yeah, and Tito, and I think he actually lost to the person that he beat in the knockout final in the state tournament, and that's how close those two were. But Tito, as a returning knockout champ, I would think returns as the favorite at the weight.
I would agree with that. I would agree 100%. But I think after him, you got a guy like Elaine Kaiser out of Trinity, Franklin or Ordonez out of Southwest Miami. It's one of those brackets where, and again, this is where certain schools and certain guys not wrestling. I mean, I would love to have seen a bracket where you have Connor McCloskey, who is ambiguously not registered. I don't know why, but
banged up.
Okay, is it okay? Well, then, well wishes to Connor, boy of mine. But Connor McCloskey, a Ryder Wilder, who has been yelling at me in my DMs. So I would love to have seen him getting after it this weekend. But I would agree that I think Tito comes in your favorite. And did he win it? Did he win at 82 last year?
I don't know what way. I can tell you real quick though. I got it right here.
Because I there have been some I forgot to do.
No, he
I
won it
think
at
you know what I'm
70.
gonna do.
He
All
won
right,
it at
man.
70.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, then never mind. Then it's like I lied. But all right. All right. You sunk my battleship. All right. Whatever. Move on.
All right. All right. So let's jump to 195 and one of, I mean, top heavy. I mean, with Luke Cochran, Brian Berberisha, who are both ranked nationally. I mean, that might be our only two nationally ranked,
I believe it is. I
you
believe it's the
know,
only one.
with two nationally ranked in the same weight class. You got Christian Motor, you got Hunter Jones from Hewitt Trussville, Alabama.
And then you got a guy like Ansel
Cervantes.
Cervantes at a Dade State champion. Parker Dunn. Soft bracket. Like like you said, a little top heavy, but you hit that next level of guys, you got some names.
Yeah, no, it's 195 is going to be a lot of fun. Now, if you were, I mentioned a few names. If you were going to seed it, and I'm not going to ask you the criteria, is Cochran one? Is Brian Berberisha one? Is Christian Motor one?
I would give it to Berberisha for one reason. I'm gonna give him the nod for the Super 32 All American. That to me would give him the edge slightly over Luke Cochran, who is a buddy of mine. I love Luke Cochran. That's my guy out of Jefferson. But I think Berberisha, I think it would be that placement at Super 32, plus the knockout runner-up last season, same as Cochran, NHSCA third to second, very similar, both state champions in their own right. Berberisha has a runner-up to his name as well. That would be me. Now, you have it in your pre-seeds, Cochran 1, Berberisha 2. I agree with that. Like, I don't think it's necessarily. This is kind of a weight where 1 and 2 are a little interchangeable to me because I
Yeah.
think,
Well, go ahead.
except for something very odd happening, I think most people would agree to assume we'll see Cochran Berberisha in the final. And if that were to be a case, might be one of the best final matchups of the weekend. I'll go on a limb and say that.
It might be. Whoever draws Christian Motor, though, better. I mean, whoever's that 2 seed and might get Christian Motor as the 3 seed, or if Motor's the 4 seed and whoever's the top seed, that's going to be a tough semi. So you better keep your eyes open.
For sure.
I'm going to go ahead and tip the cap, though, and look off the radar to a Lovett kid and Aiden Kaufman, who's been wrestling exceptionally well.
I agree.
For Lovett. And I think that he's somebody that you might want to keep an eye on. Again, I don't think anybody's beating one of the guys at the very top, but
no,
could Kaufman, knock off a few people and make a run and make the podium? I think that could happen.
Well, since you took my guy off the radar, I'm going to go Bishop to Queen 4 here. I really like Cal Rockenbach out of Flowery Branch. He's a guy that I met last season. Saw him get a state medalist out of him. He would have been on Team Fat and Strappy last season if I didn't end up canceling the trip. So I'm a big fan of Cal Rockenbach. So I would go with him as my kind of a little bit off the radar guy that I think could really make some noise.
All right, let's jump to 220. And my question to you is there a bigger favorite in the knockout than Sawyer Bartelt?
No. There isn't. And it's not a knock to anybody else. Fargo champ, Pan American Games champ twice over, knockout champ, Matt Scouts number 6, state champion twice over. I mean, you name it, he's done it. I just think he is walking in your favorite. Is he the only 2-time knockout champion in the field?
Yes. And
so he's
only a junior. So he's
still on his way.
Right, to be a 4-time.
I think he is the favorite. But if I were to say somebody who I think is the 2 seed and I think really makes some noise, Bryson Getz. Look, any of these guys from Ohio that you're like, oh, well, they got second in Ohio. Yeah, they got second in Ohio. That means something. Like, they're going to be, obviously, a Christian Bell. I love it. Don't get it twisted. Christian Bell's my guy. Killer. You got Andrew Sykes out of Vestavia. But It's Sawyer Bartelt. I mean, it's I think he is walking in your favor, and you're reigning and defending 220-pound champion here at the knockout.
Yeah, no, he's unbelievable. I mean, he beat. I'm trying to remember last year's final. It was Sammy Brown from Jefferson, and he beat him 13-0. He only gave up 1 point last year at the knockout.
That's just insanity.
I mean, we don't hand out medals before the matches occur. I mean, that's because anything can happen. But there is no bigger favorite than Sawyer Bartelt as we enter this weekend. So off the radar, I'm gonna go with another Dobbins Bennett kid out of Tennessee, and that's Garrett Crowder. I'm really interested to see him compete. I think that
of course you take my pick. Why don't you?
I mean, that's why I went first these last couple of times.
Yeah, I
know. And who do you have? It's okay to say Crowder. I mean,
no, the Crowder was mine, but if I'm gonna take another one, Charles Higdon out of Woodland, guy that we've seen go up and down a little bit sometimes. He's taken a couple weird losses here and there, a couple weird wins here or there, where it's like, oh, okay, I wouldn't have expected him to beat him, but when he's on, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see Higdon on the top half of the podium.
Yeah, all right.
Wouldn't surprise me.
So let's now jump to 285.
They placed to 8? They placed to 8 or 6?
6.
Oh, okay. Maybe not top half. I don't know if he's top 3, but he'll be on the podium.
All right. Well, and making the podium at the knockout is pretty damn good. So
yeah, I know.
I know you know. All right, jumping to 285. 285 is super interesting to me because Austin Foy from Palmetto Ridge is ranked by Flow at number 11. He places Super 32, but his highest place in the state of Florida is 4th. 4th and 6th in the state of Florida. He certainly has the ability to take anyone and throw them to their back and get the win and everything else. I'm really interested to watch Jacob Levy from Carrollton, just a sophomore, state runner-up in Georgia, Fargo runner-up.
I have him as my 3rd ranked heavyweight in the state of Georgia. I mean, the kid's a goer, and I'm excited to see him at this level of competition. And then
Point Pleasant's Colton Weaver was a West Virginia state runner-up. So I'm really interested in 285 because I think that there's actually a number of different individuals that could have an impact. Foy only just beat Gozy Moisey from Cypress Bay 4-3 this past weekend. So we could have some close matches. Although I watched Jacob Levy in his first matches back since football season, and he was a beast, man. He freaking just ran through everybody this weekend.
He's a freak of nature, that kid. Like, he's just a freak. Like, I've only put eyes on him a couple of times, and it's every time I see him, I'm like, good God, it's not fair that someone that big and that strong runs that fast and moves that quickly. It's not fair. It's not fair.
All right. So because I took the last couple of bracket busters, or the last couple that are kind of a little off the radar, I'll let you go first this time if you want.
Well, I'm pretty sure you know who I'm going to say.
I think so, but I don't know.
Aaron Garcia out of Mill Creek for me. I mean, he's a guy that I like what I see out of him. He's on the come up. I will say he's someone that the Mill Creek crew kind of little insider trading before the season told me, hey, if you don't know this kid, which I was unfamiliar to him, they're like, hey, watch out for this kid, because when he's on, and we've seen him this year notch off some really solid wins, and even in his losses, wrestling really tough. So I'm excited to see him at this level of competition. I'm excited.
So I'm going to go with Caleb Rodriguez of First Baptist Naples, who was a Fargo All-American. Actually, I think he might have been a 2-time Fargo All-American.
Yep. 2-time Fargo All-American.
Yeah. Took 4th last year as a freshman heavyweight in the state of Florida.
So he's got a couple Fargo coasters in his little armoire for sure.
Yeah, which is a couple more than I would ever have. So we'll just go with that.
More than I have. Thank you, John Mark Best. Thank you. Or I would have had one.
All right. So that is the knockout. Let's finish this with just a very quick kind of maybe 5 teams that you think that maybe have the depth and don't give them in order. Just give me 5 different teams, or I can give you 5 different teams. I can go first. I think are going to have an impact.
Yeah, you go first because I will admit teams is a lot more mathematizing than I like doing. So I'll let you go first and I'll kind of see where I agree or disagree. Because I have a train of thought, but I don't know if I'm necessarily my mind's in the right spot. So you go first, Francis.
Mathematizing. I mean, I love it when we come up with words that I've never heard of.
It's a word today.
All right. So first I'm gonna point towards Georgia, and I think that the team that we most think of would be Buford, and Buford would be one of my 5 that I think of. But I also think Cass is a team that you better keep an eye on. I think they'll bring a lot of kids. You've got Jake Craps. I haven't seen AJ Piot, and I didn't see him on the registration list. You got Lee Camp down at 6. You got the McKnights. You've got Doolittle. You've got some pieces there that I think Cass.
The guy that we didn't name, but this is actually a really good opportunity. If they're really gonna throw a real team run together, they need Crease and Grow.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree with you.
They need him to get to the podium, and he's a guy that can do that. So if he does that, it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out.
I think another Georgia team is Buford. Obviously, you've got your killers down low. That stretch of really tough kids for Buford, with Gorman and MacArthur and McCormick and Pope, and you got a little DJ Clark down at the bottom. Ty Gentry in there, Rylan Eibold. So down low,
Eibold has got to be
Eibold. Yeah. Buford's going to be tough. And then another team from Georgia to keep an eye on, and this is because maybe of their heavy hitters, and that would be Jefferson with Luke Cochran and Chaz McDonald and all of them. I think Jefferson's a team to keep an eye on as well. Going away from the state of Georgia, and I think the favorite coming in, and that is South Dade.
Yeah.
I think South Dade has got some hammers up top, but I think that the thing they do best is they put lots of kids on the podium through the backside. They accumulate those backside points, and them and Lake Gibson, I think, are my other 2 teams that I would definitely keep an eye on as far as the team race goes. And I might have missed somebody. I mean, honestly, I just did that kind of off the top of my head.
So I'm not too far off. I agree with you on all of them. Another team that I think as a tournament team, I think that the way that they're made up, I think Southwest Miami, we named about 5 or 6 of their guys that were competitors outside looking in. If they could get them toward the podium. And a team I'm going to mention, St. Vincent St. Mary's is bringing 9. 4 of their guys, or maybe 5, 4 or 5 are Ohio State placers. 2 or 3 of them are Ohio State placers. That means something. Like that they only have 9, so they probably won't even be able to win it unless some unforeseen circumstances. But I think that they could really make a solid run, maybe toward the top 10 of the podium of the team race for sure.
Yeah,
but I agree. I think Buford, Cass, Dade Gibson. I would be surprised if someone breaks into that 4. I mean, I'm trying to think as I look through the team lists. If Osceola gets things to go their way, maybe.
Well, I mean, Osceola's going to have, Cooper Haas and Anderson Heap and Gunnar
Metal
Holland.
Ridge.
Mill Creek has got, Bambinelli and Amonte
Point
Mills.
Pleasant.
Point Pleasant is a good one with Wood and Gunnar Andrick and several of their heavyweight, obviously. But you need the depth to win the knockout.
Yeah,
that's
opinion. Why I think the 4 that we said, Dade Gibson, Buford, Cass, I think those are your 4 real main contenders. Now, that doesn't say someone like a Jensen Beach or a Jesuit, if they get the right things to go their way, maybe can make something happen. A Jefferson, like we talked about. But I think that those 4 that we named are probably your 4 favorites heading in.
All right, man. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and go through we don't have brackets, but go through kind of the registration and everything else.
Always.
I look forward to seeing you in Kissimmee. It's gonna be a blast.
I'm excited, man. It's this is one of my favorite tournaments every year, and this is one of those things where, as a media guy now, getting to jump on the other side of it, I'm super excited. It'll be a lot of fun.
All right, Lucas, I appreciate it, man. You take care, and I'll see you down in Kissimmee in a few days.
Yes, sir.
All right, man.